The world today is defined by one word: speed. Every idea, technology, and business is caught in a whirlwind called growth, where delay means disappearance. In this context, the book Blitzscaling by Reid Hoffman and Chris E. emerges as a mirror reflecting the essence of this era, both glorious and full of paradoxes. The work tells the story of how companies like Airbnb, Amazon, Facebook, and Tesla created seemingly absurd explosions of growth. But behind them lies a new philosophy of survival, prioritizing speed over efficiency, choosing risk over safety, acting even when unprepared. In a world where the first to achieve scale dominates, waiting for certainty is the quickest way to be left behind. Yet what makes this book special is not just the success stories, but the questions it raises. The authors don't just talk about victories, they also point out the cost: chaos, crisis, and the fear that humans might lose control of the very systems they create. When speed becomes the norm, do humans still have time to distinguish between evolution and self-destruction? Blitzscaling is not a guide to getting rich quickly, but a diary of an era. It forces readers to re-examine the relationship between success and responsibility, between ambition and limits. For if speed was once a tool for humanity to conquer the world, now it may be testing our very capacity to survive. The question opened on the first pages of the book still echoes in a world where everything is accelerating. What is the only thing that shouldn't be rushed? Let's now begin reviewing this book. In 2011, in a small room in San Francisco, Brian Chesky of Airbnb received a message that made his heart stop. A German company named Wimdu, run by the three Sam brothers, had just received a massive $90 million investment to copy Airbnb's model in Europe. In just a few weeks, they had hired 400 employees and opened 20 offices, while Airbnb only had 40 people. Faced with the choice between acquiring the competitor to avoid risk or going all in to fight, Chesky chose the unthinkable: accelerate, expand globally, and bet on speed. That decision launched Airbnb onto a path later called Blitzscaling, hypergrowth in the fog of uncertainty. Blitzscaling is not conventional business practice. It's a state of warfare where the leader must make decisions when the map is still blank. Blitzscaling prioritizes speed over efficiency, accepting waste, chaos, and mistakes. Because in a world where the first to gain scale will dominate, hesitation means death. When Pony Ma of Tencent received a message in the middle of the night about a new app called Kick attracting young users, he didn't convene a board meeting. He simply replied, "Do it now." 2 months later, WeChat was born, and in just over a year, it had 100 million users. Speed saved Tencent just as it saved Airbnb. Both realized a cruel truth in the networked age: the slow will be crushed. Blitzscaling is like throwing yourself into a fire and learning to dance while burning. But if done right, it opens the door to empires. Airbnb, WeChat, Slack, Amazon all went through that whirlwind. Speed not only helped them survive, but also helped them capture the network effect, where each new user makes the product more valuable to existing users. Each new host makes Airbnb more attractive to travelers. Each new driver makes Uber faster at picking up customers. Each new account makes Facebook stronger. Blitzscaling is about using speed to create an uncatchable advantage. In previous eras, efficiency, doing things right, optimization, and safety were revered. But in the internet age, where changes happen hourly, safety itself becomes the biggest danger. If you don't surge ahead, someone else will. Reid Hoffman calls it the trade-off between the risk of making mistakes and the risk of being slow. A business can fail by acting wrongly, but it will certainly be wiped out if it doesn't act fast enough when the market is open. The risk is not doing it wrong, but doing it slowly. Amazon is a prime example of this mindset. When it was small, they dared to spend beyond their limits, criticized for not being profitable. But Jeff Bezos understood that rapid expansion was what would keep the company alive. As did Dropbox, where Drew Houston likened the growth process to hugging a whale, joy and fear intertwined. Blitzscaling is the choice between two ways to die: dying from slowness or having a chance to live by accelerating. But that speed cannot be blind. It requires an environment ready to accept risk, from investors to employees. You need capital as fuel and people as oxygen, those brave enough to venture into the uncertain. Today's world facilitates blitzscaling more than ever. Everything is digitized, connected, and replicated at incredible speed. Software is not just eating the world, it's also saving it. An update can turn an electric car into an autonomous vehicle. An algorithm can change how we cure diseases. A platform can spread globally in weeks. The diffusion rate of technology is why blitzscaling has become the new language of business. However, not all rapid growth is blitzscaling. Blitzscaling only happens when a business sacrifices efficiency to gain scale while certainty is lacking. Some companies grow fast simply because the market is stable and the model is clear. That's phase scaling. But blitzscaling is growth in the fog, when no one knows if the flying plane has enough wings to land safely. The process goes through 5 stages. First is family, when a small team does everything together. Then tribe, where dozens of people must trust each other more than understand each other. Next is village, when the organization has hundreds of people and needs systems. City, where thousands of people operate a giant machine. And finally, nation, where tens of thousands create a new culture together. Each step requires leaders to change their thinking, management style, and even their perception of themselves. In this journey, blitzscaling is a chess game where every move is a bet on survival. You cannot wait for enough data to make a decision. You must make decisions to generate data. That is the paradox of speed. Act before you're sure, because if you wait to be sure, you're already too late. The world of blitzscaling is a world of accelerating feedback loops. The bigger you are, the stronger you are. The stronger you are, the harder you are to replace. That's why Facebook, though starting in a dorm room, became the social network for billions. It's also why Amazon, from a small bookstore, became the commercial infrastructure of an entire planet. But behind that light is a dark side rarely mentioned. Speed not only creates power, it also creates chaos, mistakes, breakdowns, and unexpected collapses. All are real. Oracle almost went bankrupt by focusing too much on sales and forgetting to build a technical foundation. Facebook had to abandon its "move fast and break things" motto when it realized they were breaking things that couldn't be fixed. Blitzscaling is not a race for lunatics, but a journey for those who know they are rushing into danger but still go. They are not just fast, they learn fast. They correct mistakes while still running, and they know that if they stop for safety, everything is over. Blitzscaling is the art of balancing collapse and soaring. It's not for those who want certainty, but for those who believe uncertainty is the source of innovation. Empires are not built by caution, but by the courage to embrace chaos to go further. Today's world is not short of ideas, but it lacks those who dare to accelerate when others are still measuring. Airbnb, WeChat, Slack, Tesla. They all chose the path without road signs, and because of that, they created the map for others. Blitzscaling is not just a business method, it's a philosophy of life. If you don't run faster than change, change will devour you. That's the beginning of the age of speed, where every entrepreneur must ask themselves if they have the courage to accelerate when they can't see the path. Because in this world, the winner is not the strongest, but the fastest to learn how to become strong in the world of hypergrowth businesses. Speed is not just a strategy, it's the essence of survival. A company can fail by going in the wrong direction, but it will surely be wiped out if it goes too slowly. That is the paradox every founder must face when entering the era of blitzscaling. Blitzscaling is both an offensive and defensive tactic. When you advance so fast that your opponent doesn't even understand what's happening, you've already surpassed them. Slack did that, catching giants like Microsoft and Salesforce off guard. Speed creates surprise, and surprise paves the way for long-term advantage. Conversely, accelerating is also a form of self-defense. When you run fast enough, opponents can't catch up. But if you stop, you become an easy target for them. Blitzscaling thrives on network effects and positive feedback loops. When a product first achieves scale, it becomes a magnet attracting all resources: capital, talent, users. McKinsey once called this the grow fast, die slow phenomenon. Companies with growth rates above 60% when reaching $100 million in revenue are 8 times more likely to become billion-dollar companies than slower growing ones. The first to achieve the largest scale will draw all the power of the ecosystem to itself. The advantage of the first scaler is an almost unassailable throne. Once a business achieves network scale, the entire market defaults to it as the leader. Talents want to join the strong, investors want to pour capital into sure winners, and customers want to choose the most popular service. Thus, the leader grows stronger, and the followers grow weaker. Twitter and Tumblr are two opposing examples. Both started from similar points, both were creative, both made a splash. But Twitter was amidst the experienced ecosystem of Silicon Valley, filled with managers who had gone through insane growth. Tumblr, on the other hand, was isolated in the New York market, where experienced human resources were almost depleted. As a result, Twitter soared into an icon, while Tumblr was forced to sell for a cheap price. Sometimes speed comes not just from talent, but from where you stand. Blitzscaling is an expensive gamble. It demands enormous capital and the steadfastness of risk-taking investors. Yet, in this world, not investing in speed is also a risk. Those brave enough to accelerate will open up entire new markets. Those who hesitate will be devoured. This is why Silicon Valley has become a crucible of speed, not because they are smarter, but because they understand that risk acceptance is the culture there. People, capital, and knowledge intertwine into a system ready to fuel anyone who dares to leap. An idea proven to have potential can receive hundreds of millions of dollars in just a few weeks. When a company is considered to be taking off, thousands of engineers, investors, and experts will flock to it. Each contributes a part of their energy to that momentum. The entire ecosystem functions as a living organism, where speed is the bloodstream and risk is the heartbeat. However, behind the halo of speed always lies the shadow of chaos. Mark Zuckerberg once admitted that the motto, "Move fast and break things," caused Facebook more harm than good. When operating at high speed, small errors become big disasters. Oracle almost collapsed due to developing too quickly and selling too much, while its financial and technical systems couldn't adapt. Hypergrowth also forces leaders to change themselves. What helped you succeed at a small scale will kill you at a large scale. The leader of a team of 10 must transform into the commander of an organization of thousands. Decision-making, inspiring, and even how they perceive the world must be restructured. Many founders fail not because of the market, but because they cannot transform themselves fast enough to keep up with their own company. Blitzscaling is not just a business skill, but the art of living in a danger zone. It forces you to constantly shed old skins. When the company is in the family stage, you know every person, every detail. But as it grows into a tribe, then a city, you no longer control by familiarity, but by systems, rules, and culture. Each level is a metamorphosis, and it is in this process that businesses learn to turn chaos into temporary order, then break that order to create new speed. Apple, Facebook, Airbnb all went through these cycles. They built stability, then broke it to accelerate, because standing still in this world means falling behind. At the heart of blitzscaling is a simple truth. The bigger you get, the faster you get. The faster you get, the bigger you get. It's a self-amplifying spiral that no one wants to leave. Each new user makes the network stronger, makes investment capital more abundant, and multiplies the ability to scale. This speed not only changes companies, it changes the world. Silicon Valley was not born to go fast, but learned to survive when the world accelerated. And now, those principles have spread globally, from Detroit with Rocket Mortgage to Shanghai with WeChat. Wherever there are people brave enough to take risks, blitzscaling can begin. The world is entering a phase where innovation is no longer about inventing something new, but about growing faster than everyone else. Those who understand the rhythm of speed will lead. Those who cling to certainty will be left behind. Blitzscaling doesn't teach you the right path. It teaches you to create the path with your own strides. From the foundation of speed, we move to something deeper: business model innovation, the core factor that sustains growth momentum. Technology can be copied, but the monetization model, value structure, and ecosystem operation are the secrets that others cannot replicate. This is the heart of blitzscaling, where the greatest companies make the leap between existence and domination. Technology is not the soul of speed. The business model is the heart that determines whether a company can grow like a storm. An algorithm can be copied, but how a business turns value into revenue, how it defines the relationship between users, customers, and products, that is what cannot be copied in the world of blitzscaling. Business model innovation is the foundation of survival. An idea, no matter how brilliant, if it doesn't know how to scale profitably, will eventually collapse. Therefore, Reid Hoffman believes that successful companies are not just places that invent technology, but laboratories that create new growth models. Google is not just a search engine. but a business that invented how to connect advertising and user data to double the value of each search. Tesla not only produces electric cars, but creates a continuously updating software ecosystem that turns the car into a mobile technology platform. To build a model capable of rapid growth, businesses must understand 4 growth drivers. First is the network effect, where each new user makes the product more valuable to the next. Facebook, Uber, Airbnb were born from that spreading power. Second is distribution. Because an idea truly lives only when it reaches millions of people, technology just starts it, but distribution is the path to victory. Third is gross margin, the factor that allows businesses to continuously invest in expansion without running out of money. And finally, market size, because there's no point in accelerating on too narrow a road. However, growth is not a straight path. 2 limits constantly lurk: operational capacity and product market fit. If a business accelerates without being systemically ready, it will collapse under its own weight. Oracle, Facebook, Amazon all went through phases where growth speed outpaced operational capacity, forcing them to restructure their entire organization. Blitzscaling is not just growing fast, but growing fast without breaking. That's why the business model needs to be designed to self-amplify its power. Dropbox is a prime example. Drew Houston understood that if he followed the traditional advertising path, Dropbox couldn't compete with Google or Microsoft. Instead, he created a file-sharing model where each new user became a natural marketing channel, spreading the service through every link. Growth costs were almost zero, but user numbers exploded. Similarly, Airbnb and Uber don't own products in the traditional sense. They don't have hotels or cars, but create platforms connecting providers with users. Power lies not in assets, but in the model's structure. When a model has a large enough network effect, its value transcends physical boundaries, becoming social infrastructure. The world's largest businesses don't win because they create the best products, but because they create ecosystems where products become irreplaceable. A company can sell goods, but a platform can control how goods move. Amazon started by selling books and now has become the infrastructure of global e-commerce, where every small company must depend on it. That's the essence of blitzscaling, dominating not just market share, but also the rules of the game. In every business model, there are proven structures capable of extremely rapid scaling. Marketplace models like Apple or eBay connect 2 user groups and let them create value for each other. SaaS models like Salesforce or Slack sell software in packages and expand via the cloud. Freemium models like Spotify attract hundreds of millions of free users before converting them to paid. Each structure is a different way to harness the speed that the internet brings. But what makes blitzscaling different is its willingness to accept the illogical. In the early stages, companies are willing to incur heavy losses, burning cash just to secure the first position in customers' minds. This sounds crazy to efficiency-driven people, but is the logic of survival in a networked world. Because once dominant scale is achieved, businesses can leverage margin effects to recover capital many times over. Netflix once accepted spending billions of dollars on content, and then, once viewers were hooked, the entire television market had to revolve around their orbit. A blitzscaling business must learn to design temporary imbalance. It knows that sacrificing short-term profit is a way to buy long-term speed. This daring is something old corporations cannot do because they are constrained by shareholders, processes, and the fear of losing control. Meanwhile, companies like Amazon, Tesla, or ByteDance consider instability a natural condition for survival. Blitzscaling is a blend of art and mathematics. It requires the intuition of a storyteller and the precision of a strategist. Every decision is a conscious gamble. If you win, you not only dominate the market but also shape its future. If you lose, you become a lesson for the next. In every model analyzed, Hoffman and E all point out an unspoken rule: growth is not the result of luck but of intentional design. Companies like Facebook or Amazon did not explode by chance. They planned for that madness, preparing capital, personnel, infrastructure, and culture to withstand the blast. The last thing that makes blitzscaling different is the speed of feedback. When a business moves fast, mistakes are inevitable, but if the learning speed is high enough, each mistake becomes a stepping stone. Amazon failed with a host of products, phone, auctions, wallet, but they learned faster than competitors and pivoted before being submerged. Speed of reaction, not perfection, is the shield protecting hypergrowth companies. Blitzscaling is not a race between companies, but a race between humans and time. A technology, an idea, a model only lives if it advances faster than the world's changes. Those who understand that will know that in this era, success belongs not to the safe, but to those who dare to enter the chaotic zone and call it home. That is the philosophy every blitzscaling company shares. Choose the uncertain path, because only in uncertainty does speed become true power. And when speed becomes a habit, you no longer run to escape danger, but run to create the future. When a business reaches the threshold where all old rules begin to dissolve, the first question that arises is when to start accelerating. There's no fixed formula. This decision requires sharp intuition, as if seeing a storm forming on the horizon. You cannot initiate blitzscaling when the market is still vague and the product hasn't found its place in users' hearts, but neither can you wait until everything is safe, because then the opportunity will have already gone to someone else. The moment to start blitzscaling is when your product perfectly fits a market need. That market is wide enough to offer a chance for domination, and there are dangerous enough competitors lurking. That's when speed becomes the only weapon. Airbnb truly accelerated only when it realized users were willing to trust strangers in their space. Facebook began its surge when its network effect was strong enough to swallow other platforms. LinkedIn entered its explosive growth phase when the number of professional profiles reached a volume that new users couldn't ignore. When this synergy occurs, businesses must dare to throw themselves forward, even knowing the wind will tear their sails. Blitzscaling is a strategy that forces the reversal of all traditional principles. Rules like careful planning, frugal spending, and dedicated customer service might all have to be set aside. Not because they are wrong, but because at that moment, speed is more important than perfection. A wrong decision can be corrected, but delay cannot. Founders must learn to invest when still in doubt, make decisions when data is insufficient, and accept that some chaos is the price of leadership. But if there's a time to start, there's also a time to know when to stop. When to stop blitzscaling is when speed begins to cause more harm than good, when costs grow faster than revenue, when organizational energy is drained by chaos, or when reputational, legal, or cultural risks exceed control. Amazon once experienced that moment when its logistics system couldn't keep up with expansion speed, forcing them to pause to consolidate infrastructure. Facebook also had to adjust when move fast and break things was no longer suitable, as a scale of billions of users couldn't withstand breakdowns. Stopping is not failure, but adjustment to accelerate next time. Blitzscaling is the tension between two extremes, daring and discipline. Daring to venture into uncharted territory and discipline to know when to regain control of the momentum. Many companies fail not because they don't dare to accelerate, but because they don't know how to decelerate. Uber once grew at a dizzying pace, but when scandals and social backlash erupted, that speed became a burden. Only by changing their management model and internal culture did they find balance between speed and sustainability. There are also those who choose not to blitzscale. Is it possible to choose not to accelerate? The answer is yes, but one must understand the cost of that choice. Not every market requires extreme speed. A company operating in a niche, without strong network effects, or not threatened by fast-growing competitors, can choose to go slow and refine. But if the environment contains a winner-take-all element, if networks and brands create absolute advantages, not blitzscaling means forever ceding the top spot. The blitzscaling strategy is not a comfortable choice but an unavoidable one. When scale defines who survives, speed is a condition for survival. Founders can delay, but they cannot avoid the question. Either you accelerate and control the chaos, or you are dragged down by slowness. That is why successful entrepreneurs view blitzscaling as a transformational stage, a metamorphosis rather than a business tactic. When a business enters this stage, the first thing it loses is certainty. The blitzscaling strategy is an iteration of action and learning in an uncertain environment. No one has a ready-made map. Founders must learn as they go, experimenting with each move and observing market reactions. That's why speed and the ability to learn quickly are more important than detailed plans. Look at how Facebook handled the mobile transition. Zuckerberg realized that if they hesitated, the company would be overtaken by new mobile apps. He immediately halted all side projects, focusing the entire team on mobile products. That decision was seen as risky but saved Facebook. They didn't have time for careful thought, they only had time to act. Similarly, when LinkedIn began global expansion, they didn't have enough data to predict which markets would succeed. But instead of waiting for certainty, they chose to experiment quickly in many places simultaneously, gather feedback, and then readjust the strategy. Each cycle of trial, error, learning, and reiteration became a miniature blitzscaling cycle. The blitzscaling strategy is not planned once, but forged through every decision in the dust of real-world combat. This speed comes not just from technology, but from the leader's mindset. Founders must be ready to discard old rules to embrace a new rhythm. In the blitzscaling world, the right decision today can be wrong tomorrow, so flexibility becomes a vital virtue. Blitzscaling leaders don't seek absolute correctness, they seek the fastest adaptation. It is in this constant movement that they gradually realize a rule: speed cannot be maintained indefinitely without structure. After each acceleration phase, businesses must rebuild their internal strength from people, systems, to culture to prepare for the next round. The question of when to stop and when to restart becomes the natural rhythm of every organization living at speed. Blitzscaling is a continuous iterative process. No one embarks on this path with a complete map in hand. Every step is an experiment, every decision is a test, and the results are never fixed. The world changes faster than any plan. Therefore, the only correct strategy is the one that knows how to adapt. In that space, the founder is no longer the one directing everything, but the one who creates the feedback loop between reality and learning. Each iterative cycle consists of 3 beats: try, measure, and adjust. And only through hundreds of such beats can a business mature without losing its original soul. The speed of this cycle is directly proportional to the ability to survive. The blitzscaling strategy is the art of learning faster than change. When a wrong decision can cost a business an entire market, a slow reaction is even more dangerous than a mistake. Therefore, all blitzscaling companies develop nonlinear decision-making mechanisms. Learning loops are executed in parallel, without waiting for each step to be perfected. Airbnb once tried dozens of growth campaigns simultaneously, accepting that 80% would fail, but the 20% success rate would compensate for everything. It was this ability to intentionally experiment that kept them years ahead of others. Blitzscaling changes strategy at each development level. When the business is still at the family scale, every decision is direct, intuitive, and tied to survival. When moving to tribe, flexibility is still needed, but structure must begin to emerge. The leader cannot do everything themselves, but needs to delegate authority for teams to operate semi-autonomously. At the village level, systems begin to replace people in making repetitive decisions. Culture gradually forms as a collective memory. When the company reaches city, complexity explodes, conflicts of interest, fragmented processes, and internal communication become critical issues. And finally, at the nation level, where tens of thousands of people operate together, speed is maintained only when all structures point towards the same central value. At this point, strategy is no longer a collection of plans, but an operating philosophy. The changing role of the founder is inevitable in this process. In the early stage, they are the doer designing products, raising capital, talking to every customer. In the tribe stage, they become the leader transmitting energy, building trust. In the village, they become the organizer building the apparatus and processes. In city, they must transform into a teacher training subordinate leaders, empowering teams to operate without their supervision. And when the company reaches nation, the founder becomes the guardian of the soul, no longer managing every detail, but ensuring that the culture and vision are not diluted. This transformation process is not easy. Each level demands a new person within the same body. Many founders fail not because they are not intelligent, but because they cannot change themselves fast enough. They maintain habits of direct decision-making when the company already needs a decentralized system. They hoard control, causing speed to decline and talent to leave. Others lose their original vision, turning the company into a bureaucratic machine. Blitzscaling forces people to grow at the same pace as the organization, otherwise, they will be left behind. One of the most valuable lessons from this journey comes from LinkedIn. As the platform began global growth, Reid Hoffman was forced to hand over leadership to Jeff Weiner. Not because Hoffman was incompetent, but because the company needed a different kind of capability, the ability to maintain scale while remaining flexible. Hoffman understood that the founder couldn't be the only one steering the ship when it became a fleet. That decision to delegate power helped LinkedIn continue to accelerate without breaking under its own weight. Blitzscaling is not about accelerating with individual strength, but by amplifying the collective's capacity. At a small scale, speed comes from the consensus of a few people. At a large scale, speed comes from a structure that enables thousands of people to act in one direction. This requires a fundamental shift in leadership thinking, from "I do best" to "I enable others to do better than me." Founders must learn to trust when data is insufficient. They must learn to hire people better than themselves and give them the freedom to innovate within a shared value framework. As the company develops through each level, the blitzscaling strategy becomes a delicate balancing act between control and letting go. In the family stage, letting go means sharing responsibility. In village, it means empowering systems. In nation, it means trusting in culture as a living organism. If the founder doesn't dare to let go, speed will die from bottlenecks. If they let go too early, the organization will lose direction. Only when the leader senses the true pulse of the business when to hold tight, when to loosen can speed reach a sustainable state. And then, at a certain moment, blitzscaling is no longer an action but becomes an instinct. The business learns to self-adjust, to learn without commands, to change direction without prior notice. At that level, speed no longer relies on the leader, but is maintained by the organization's very structure and culture. Blitzscaling peaks when the system sustains its growth momentum without coercion. But to reach that point, every founder must go through a period of losing control. They will feel the company slipping from their grasp, employees no longer reporting details, decisions being made without their knowledge. That feeling is frightening but necessary. Temporary loss of control is a sign that the organization is growing faster than the individual. The important thing is to learn to live with that feeling, transforming fear into trust in the people and structures they have built. When speed becomes instinct, the next challenge is no longer in strategy, but in the ability to sustain people and systems in the whirlwind of growth. Management innovation is the deepest part of blitzscaling, where businesses learn to operate in a state of continuous imbalance while maintaining direction. No one can control an organization of thousands of people the way they once controlled the first 10. Change is the law of life, and with blitzscaling, change is the means of survival. 8 critical shifts in management are the backbone of this stage. First is the shift from intuition to data. In the early stages, founders rely on feeling, but when scale becomes huge, feeling is no longer fast enough to reflect reality. Data becomes the eyes of the organization. Amazon is a prime example. Every decision, no matter how small, is validated by numbers, not emotions. The second shift is from functional organization to mission-based organization. As personnel skyrocket, businesses can no longer divide groups by skill, but must divide them by objective. Each team must have autonomy to pursue a specific outcome. Third is from hiring generalists to hiring specialists. When the scale is small, one person can do many things, but at a large scale, the depth of competence, not the breadth, is crucial. Fourth, from direct management to management via systems. Leaders cannot be everywhere. They must establish self-operating processes, measurable goals, and feedback mechanisms. Fifth, from a family culture to an organizational culture, where personal trust gives way to shared values and clear principles. Sixth is from absolute speed to structured speed. When the company is small, moving fast and breaking things is a philosophy of life. But when the system grows larger, breaking too many things will halt the entire machine. Seventh is from focusing on the product to focusing on people. Products can change, but the team is the energy that prolongs speed. And finally, the eighth step, from short-term thinking to long-term vision. Speed without direction is self-destruction. Only when the organization knows what it's growing for does speed become power instead of addiction. What makes blitzscaling paradoxical is that it is driven by 9 counterintuitive rules. These rules seem to contradict all business textbooks. The first rule, let chaos happen, then control it. Every large business goes through a chaotic phase. If you try to suppress it too early, you also suppress creativity and experimentation. The second rule, hire people better than yourself, even if you don't yet know what they will do. Many founders are afraid to hire stronger people for fear of losing control, but that's precisely what slows them down. The third rule, prioritize market share over profit when vying for leadership. Profit comes later. Netflix, Amazon, Uber all accepted losses for years to dominate the market because they understood that the first to achieve dominant scale would reap all the rewards. The fourth rule, act before having a complete plan. In the world of hypergrowth, a perfect plan never arrives in time for reality. The fifth rule, make decisions when data is incomplete, but don't stop learning when data arrives. The sixth rule, prioritize trust and culture over structure. When speed forces the organization to change monthly, culture is the only thing that keeps everyone aligned toward a common goal. The seventh rule, accept failure as a natural part of the system. Every mistake is evidence that the organization is learning fast enough. The eighth rule, change leadership roles frequently. The leader of one stage may no longer be suitable for the next stage, and that is not a personal fault but the logic of development. The final rule, maintain urgency even when already leading. Success leads to complacency, and complacency is the slow death of speed. Blitzscaling does not accept a stable state. When a company stops changing, it begins to regress. Therefore, blitzscaling organizations constantly cultivate a rhythm of transformation. An internal cycle forces them to restructure before the market compels them to do so. Google constantly reshuffles product teams, Facebook incessantly rebuilds its teams, Amazon considers model changes an annual habit. They don't wait for a crisis to reform, they view reform as the normal state. Behind this philosophy is the belief that change is energy, not a threat. When employees become accustomed to change, they no longer fear instability, but see it as an opportunity to learn and develop. This culture requires leaders to be honest about reality, willing to admit mistakes, and create space for experimentation. Without such a culture, speed will destroy itself. From a deeper perspective, management innovation and blitzscaling is a continuous dialogue between people and systems. People bring creativity, systems bring order. Only when these two elements blend can speed avoid turning into chaos. Every hiring decision, every new process, every cultural change must answer one question. Does it help the organization learn faster or slow it down? If it slows down, no matter how logical it seems, it must be eliminated. And when the organization has learned to self-adjust, it moves to the highest state, sustainable speed. That's when the business doesn't need to run faster but still advances faster. Each individual understands their role in the overall rhythm. Each team operates like cells in a living body. Speed, then, is no longer the result of commands, but the natural breath of the organization. When people no longer ask how to go faster, but how to learn faster. When change no longer causes anxiety, but becomes excitement, then the business not only dominates the market, but also becomes a symbol of a new world, a world where courage, intelligence, and speed merge to create the future. Looking out into the world, we realize that speed is no longer the exclusive privilege of technology. The principles once belonging only to Silicon Valley have now permeated every corner of the global economy, from garment factories and farms to energy corporations. All are learning the new language of the era, the language of blitzscaling. With its essence as the art of growth beyond limits, it is no longer just a formula for software companies. It has become the operating method of an entire civilization moving faster than its own ability to perceive. Consider Zara, a clothing store seemingly distant from the tech world, yet Zara is a vivid testament to blitzscaling beyond high-tech. It applies the philosophy, give customers what they want and deliver it faster than anyone else. In the fashion industry, where trends can change in just a few weeks, Zara has turned speed into a strategic advantage. They boast an extremely short production cycle. From design concept to product on store shelves takes less than 3 weeks. In a world where every brand copies each other, Zara doesn't need advertising because its rapid response is the most effective marketing tool. Speed also reshapes the energy industry. Tesla not only produces electric cars, but has restructured the entire supply chain of the automotive industry, making every software improvement capable of transforming a car into a new product overnight. SpaceX, meanwhile, is redefining the aerospace industry, a field once considered slow and resistant to innovation. For them, each launch is not just a technical success, but a lesson for the next, shortening the improvement cycle from years to mere weeks. Blitzscaling in the hands of Elon Musk is not just a business philosophy, but the operating method of science in the 21st century. Not only startups, but even the oldest corporations are learning to move like startups. Blitzscaling older organizations is the story of the awakening of giants. Microsoft was once a symbol of inertia, but under Satya Nadella, the company transformed by learning to internalize smallness. He encouraged small teams to experiment freely, detached from the rigid corporate system, accepting fast failures and learning quickly. These task forces operate like internal startups, moving independently yet connected within the organization's overall structure. Google also understands that to maintain speed, they must create an environment where risk is not punished. Thus, X Factory was born, where crazy ideas like self-driving cars or internet via balloons are tested without needing management approval. Every project here can fail, but that failure pushes the entire company forward. In the world of blitzscaling, failure is not a stopping point, but raw material for the next acceleration cycle. Speed is the universal language of the era. Whether you make shoes or write code, the rules of the game are the same. Whoever reacts faster wins. This opens up a profound paradox. Technology is no longer the limit. Humans are the limit. Businesses are forced to change how they think, how they organize, and even how they learn to keep pace with market volatility. An agricultural company in India can use AI to forecast harvests. A hospital in Sweden can double its examination and treatment productivity thanks to automated software. And a university in the US can launch a new curriculum in just a few weeks. Blitzscaling is redefining every concept of slowness and certainty. But as speed overflows economic boundaries, it begins to invade social life as well. Blitzscaling thinking extends to politics, culture, and social movements. An idea can spread globally in hours, creating profound changes more impactful than decades of policy. Me Too, Black Lives Matter, or global climate campaigns are all forms of blitzscaling of ideas, where the speed of diffusion transcends all boundaries of power. The power of human networks, when connected by shared belief and anger, can grow even faster than a startup. We are living in an era where information, goods, and emotions all travel at the speed of light. The only difference between a company and a movement, between a business and a community, is how they use speed to create impact. A company uses speed to expand market share. A movement uses speed to change social consciousness. Whether economic or humanitarian, the essence of blitzscaling remains the same. Leverage the power of networks to create breakthroughs in the shortest possible time. The world of speed no longer distinguishes between startups and corporations, between technology and craftsmanship, between commerce and belief. Everything is now measured by the ability to respond to change. And when change becomes the only law, blitzscaling is no longer anyone's sole strategy. It is the shared breath of a global economy that is teaching itself to move faster, think faster, and if necessary, break faster to regenerate. From here, the question is no longer how to blitzscale, but where and who is blitzscaling faster? Because beyond Silicon Valley, new centers of speed are rising, where blitzscaling thinking is redefined according to the culture, people, and unique rhythm of each land. And that journey begins with two of the strongest poles, one where speed was born and one that is taking it to an entirely new level. Silicon Valley was once considered the sole center of speed, but as the world changes, that fire has spread beyond US borders, creating a host of new lands where blitzscaling thinking is reborn with its own identity. Blitzscaling Great Silicon Valley remains the starting point, the cradle where all principles of speed were forged into a culture. Here, investment capital, talent, technology, and open-mindedness blend into an ideal environment for those willing to accept failure to achieve success. It's no accident that thousands of companies worldwide seek out this place. They don't just want capital, they want to breathe an atmosphere where risk is not seen as a mistake, but as a condition for learning faster. Silicon Valley exists not because it produces smarter people, but because it possesses an ecosystem of failure. Elsewhere, a failed project means the end. But here, it's a passport to the next opportunity. Investors accept losses as long as they learn something. An engineer laid off today might found $1 billion company tomorrow. Everything operates like a giant machine, where failure is recycled fuel for success. However, the world doesn't stand still for Silicon Valley to monopolize speed. Blitzscaling regions worldwide have emerged as natural responses to globalization. In India, Bangalore is becoming Asia's software valley. In Israel, Tel Aviv combines startup speed with the power of high-tech military. London, Berlin, Porto each carries its own identity. India boasts a young demographic eager to experiment. Israel brings a survival spirit, turning defense technology into commercial ventures. Europe is slower but has depth and a long-term vision. Each region doesn't copy Silicon Valley, but learns to transform speed into its own language, suitable for its culture. But among all, nowhere embodies the blitzscaling spirit more powerfully than China, the land of blitzscaling. There, speed is not just a strategy but a national instinct. With a colossal population, an hourly expanding market, and brutal domestic competition, Chinese companies are forced to move as if their lives depend on every second. There's no time for perfection, only action. ByteDance launches new features in days. Tencent experiments with dozens of products every quarter. ByteDance continuously adjusts algorithms to adapt to user behavior. If Silicon Valley relies on idea innovation, China wins through innovation and execution speed. In the US, an idea might take months to be approved. In China, decisions are made in hours. Here, founders are both strategists and commanding generals in the battle for growth. The 996, culture working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week becomes a symbol of the blitzscaling will. Fierce competition forces every company to continuously reinvent, and that pressure transforms them into ceaselessly innovating machines. The difference between these two poles of speed lies in their underlying philosophies. Silicon Valley springs from freedom, believing that great ideas need space to grow. China innovates from pressure, believing that only life-or-death competition produces the strong. One side is a discovery mindset, the other is an execution mindset. And in the world of blitzscaling, these two models are not contradictory, they complement each other. If Silicon Valley is where inventions happen, China is where they are refined and scaled. If the US creates the concept of a startup, China turns it into hyperspeed scaling. As the world becomes more connected, speed spreads across cultures, creating a new form of energy, global speed. A company in the US can copy a Chinese model in a few months, while Chinese startups learn to operate by international standards. The race between these two poles is no longer east versus west, but between those who understand how to learn fast and those who don't. Blitzscaling becomes the common language of the globe, a symphony that every nation is trying to play in its own rhythm. However, when everyone is accelerating, the unavoidable question is how to defend against a blitzscaling opponent. In a world where every company can become a potential competitor, speed seems to be the only option. But not everyone can compete in that race. Some companies choose to defend against blitzscaling by retreating into depth, focusing on core values that competitors find difficult to copy. Instead of competing on speed, they compete on trust, culture, and personalized service. Apple is a testament to this strategy. They don't race to launch products fastest, but invest in a seamless experience that others cannot replicate. Starbucks is similar. It doesn't blitzscale in terms of store numbers, but builds emotional attachment, making the brand a part of customers' daily habits. Defending against speed is not running slower, but running in a different direction. In the age of blitzscaling, not everyone should race. Some fields demand sustainability more than explosion. But what is certain is that anyone who doesn't understand the rules of speed will be eliminated from the race. The world is no longer divided between fast and slow, but between those who understand how to intentionally accelerate and those who are merely swept away by the whirlwind. And when these poles of speed have reached physical and social limits, the final question emerges: what will humans do when speed itself begins to exceed their control? From there, the journey of blitzscaling shifts from conquering the world to confronting itself, to the responsibility of speed and its cost to society. When speed has become the nature of the world, the issue is no longer how to go faster, but where we are running and who will be responsible when everyone accelerates. Responsible speed is not a pessimistic warning, but the final chapter of maturity, when humans learn to balance ambition with the consequences of that ambition. Blitzscaling was once lauded as a symbol of the era of innovation. But as companies reach colossal scales, the dark side of speed begins to reveal itself. Uber grew so fast that it outpaced its own control, embroiled in ethical and legal crises. Facebook became a social network for billions, but also a tool for spreading misinformation and political conflict. Airbnb was forced to confront protesting cities because of its impact on the housing market. Speed was once a source of pride. Now it becomes an ethical question. When we change the world too fast, do we even know what we are changing it into? Blitzscaling in society posits that hypergrowth not only creates wealth, but also creates responsibility. When a company scales by breaking old rules, it is forced to learn to live in the world it has changed. No one can escape the consequences of the very speed they create. A good idea is no longer enough. It must be accompanied by awareness to confront this. The authors propose a framework for responsible blitzscaling, a mindset framework to help businesses learn how to grow without losing their integrity. First, every growth decision needs to be examined through three lenses: social impact, transparency, and cultural sustainability. A company can expand quickly, but must know when to pause to build an ethical foundation. Airbnb is a typical example. When criticized for disrupting the housing market, they didn't shy away but proactively collaborated with authorities, established rental rules, and applied technology to monitor users. They understood that speed is only meaningful if it doesn't destroy the surrounding environment. Responsibility doesn't slow down speed, it helps speed endure longer. A business that listens to society will have a longer lifespan than those that only run. Balancing growth and responsibility is not a concession, but the only way to sustainable evolution. The authors describe this journey as a response spectrum that every blitzscaling business must traverse. At the first end is denial, when they believe speed justifies all actions. Then comes defense, when they begin to recognize risks and try to control damage. Next is cooperation, when the business understands that only by working with the community and government can it continue to grow. Finally, there's recreation, when speed is linked to social goals, becoming a tool for improvement rather than destruction. The company that understands this chain of reactions early will be able to turn crises into opportunities. Facebook, after its data scandals, was forced to change its structure, enhance security, and make algorithms transparent. Uber, after a period of losing control, was reborn by building a new corporate culture focused on trustworthiness rather than just growth. Airbnb learned that true success comes not from having more users, but from being more trusted. The ultimate destination of this journey is balancing responsibility and velocity, the art of keeping speed and responsibility coexisting. Speed is not the enemy of ethics. Indifference is. A company can run fast and still be humane if it knows why it's running and whom it's serving. The authors emphasize, speed is only valuable when it is guided by awareness, not instinct. If speed is fire, responsibility is the hand that keeps it from consuming everything. Blitzscaling in a deeper sense is not just a story of business, it is a metaphor for humanity itself. We are living in an era where technology develops faster than human adaptability. Every invention, every advancement is a form of blitzscaling. From social media to artificial intelligence, from robotics to renewable energy, the world is accelerating without necessarily knowing where it's headed. The question is no longer, what can we do, but should we do it? And if we do, how do we do it without losing ourselves? The authors conclude that the future belongs not to the fastest runners, but to those who know how to balance speed and meaning. Only when speed is coupled with compassion does humanity deserve the technological power it creates. A great business is not judged by the number of users, but by how it treats the society around it. A strong economy is not measured by GDP, but by its ability to maintain human dignity amidst the whirlwind of change. Blitzscaling begins as a strategy to win and ends as a philosophy to live. Speed is necessary, but without responsibility, it will devour its creators. When every company, every nation, and every individual learns to control speed with awareness, the world will no longer be a race of machines, but a journey of humans who know how to run fast for a worthy purpose. That is the ultimate message of blitzscaling. We can go very fast, but we should only go fast toward what is good. What remains after closing this book is not a formula for success, but a mirror reflecting ourselves. Blitzscaling doesn't teach how to get rich quickly, but how humans react when thrown into a whirlwind of change. It forces us to ask ourselves, when everything around us is running, will we choose to stand still, go slow, or plunge into the eye of the storm to find new order? The biggest lesson here lies not in numbers or strategies, but in our attitude toward life. Speed is not the goal, but a test of courage. Who can maintain their human essence amidst the grind of ambition? Only that person truly understands what growth is. This book talks about companies, but in reality, it talks about every individual learning to grow up, learning to lose control without losing direction, learning to change while remaining loyal to what matters most. But perhaps the real question the book leaves is not how to blitzscale, but what are we blitzscaling? Are we accelerating out of curiosity, out of belief, or just out of fear of being left behind? In a world where everyone talks about growth, perhaps what's needed more is to know when to pause and understand whom we are running for. If you have come this far with me, perhaps you too feel the pulse of this world, a world both exciting and fragile, where every decision carries consequences. Try to look at your work, your dreams, and your personal life. What are you trying to accelerate, and what needs to be slowed down to go deeper?